Welcome, Catherine, to the Empathy Edge podcast. I'm excited to talk to you. We have been co-conspirators for a while now on all things leadership and empathy. So, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Maria. I'm thrilled to be here. A great opportunity to connect with you again. You're right, co-conspirators in a few things. So delighted to be on your podcast today.
Exactly. And you run Fluency Leadership, as we just heard in the intro. So tell us a little bit. I know today we're going to really be talking about the importance of empathy and managing up. We talk a lot about empathy flowing downhill from leaders, and I know I've been part of the problem with that narrative for a while until I realized, no, we've got to start talking about everybody embracing empathy for each other at every level. And part of what sparked this is you wrote an amazing article about the importance of managing up and understanding up, if you will. But before we get into all of that, tell us a little bit about your story. We know you're a coach and a facilitator. You've worked with a lot of different clients over the years. How did you even get into this work, and what's your passion in it?
Yeah, my passion is that early in my career, I had this fabulous mentor, great role model leader. So out of the gate, I was blessed with this leader, and so learned a lot from him, got my interest in leadership there, spent many years in corporate communications, marketing communications, but was always interested in the leadership development and how leaders really have that place where they can create a good environment from people. And my managing up story was also early in my career because I had this VP that was sort of my internal client, and I just found him so difficult to work with, an engineer, very process driven, very systematic, particular. And I remember saying to my boss, like, can I change the file on this? I just can't work with this person. They're impossible. I found him, annoying. I would use words like that. And my boss kind of looked at me and said, Kath, you have to figure him out. Like, that's your mission. I can make it easy for you, but all through your career, you're going to come across people who you'll find it difficult to work with. So I made it my mission to figure him out. And I think one of the things that was a flip for me was realizing that I was looking at it from a very one way point of view. How is this person impacting me? Instead of what does this person need? So that outward. So as you're talking about, empathy is a two-way street.
Mm-hmm.
So I made it that my mission to figure out, well, what was important to him? What did he need to see? How could I build the trust? And so we finally got there. Like, it was almost like, I'm going to win him over. And I did. And years later, he became a CEO of a company,
Mm-hmm.
a biotech company, and he hired me.
Mm-hmm.
And so we worked great. He became my mentor. I mean, this person was really important in my
Wow.
career. So going from, I don't want to work with him, to be my mentor was important. And even in that new organization, people would come into my office and say, you seem to have figured him out. Like, what's the secret? What do I need to know? And it was
Uh-huh.
always about, this is what this person needs to operate at their best.
I
And
love
so
that.
that was a lesson.
I love that. Well, I mean, that's the whole thing we're talking about when we talk about empathy. It's so often confused with I've got to be crying with people, but it's really just about trying to understand where other people are coming from and what makes them tick. And the nirvana is when you both interact with each other in that way, where they care about what makes you tick, you care about what makes them tick, but we're not always in that environment. So, I get that question a lot from people. I know you and I have talked about this of, well, what do I do if the other person isn't empathetic to me? And my response is always, you are the only person you can control in the interaction. So tell
Oh,
us a little bit about that, because can you share some advice about how you were able to set the tone for the interaction with him while you were gathering the information about him to maybe help him realize, hey, there's another way to operate when you're communicating with another person?
Yeah, and I think communication is really the key there. And so trust and communication are the elements.
Hmm.
And I remember my boss who had said figure him out has said you need to build trust. And I think that's a foundation for all leadership and that
Hmm.
starting point. And the way you build trust is to get to know people and
Hmm.
get to know them as the human beings that they are. So instead of looking at this person as the micromanager or the demanding manager or whatever labels I was putting on it, I got to know him as a human being. You know, he was a father, he had, all kinds of interests. And so you get to know the whole person. And their style and their way around it is maybe a part of who they are. Like we're
Hmm.
so quick to label, micromanager or my way or the highway boss or whatever we do.
Hmm.
But that's just a part of who a person is. And frankly, it's a little judgmental. So it's about meeting people where they are. And
Right.
the more we got to know each other, and I leaned in with curiosity about
Hmm.
what did you need, the more he, sort of released a bit of that
Hmm.
control.
Hmm.
Because that's it in the end, as you said. I have so many people in coaching that start off with, how can I get this person to change?
Yeah.
And it's, you can't. All you're responsible for is how you show up. So that's what I made my mission
Right.
and still do with people. It's how can you see it differently? How can you shift your perspective to
Right.
give them what they need?
And how do you do that without becoming subservient? How do you do that while still getting your needs and your tasks and your boundaries met?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's not about tolerating things. And I think when you look at people with, what's underneath, what's maybe driving the behavior, we're very quick to judge other people's behaviors, but what we don't always look at is what's driving the behavior. And
Hmm.
sometimes it comes from a fear of failure. They don't want to get things wrong, or they may be getting pressure from other people. I mean, this guy was a VP, but he reported up to the CEO, and he didn't want to get that wrong. And
Hmm.
so it is that meeting people where they are, but also holding your boundaries. So it isn't about taking it all on. As you build trust, you can have the conversations with people
Hmm.
around, well, why don't we look at it another way, or have we thought about other things? So, one of the tools I would offer is that tool of curiosity
Hmm.
to help people shift,
Hmm.
maybe shift, or at least maybe look at things in a different way. And then they come to know you, and
Hmm.
then we'll listen closely the next
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, I mean, and you see so many parallels of how this goes both ways. This goes whether exactly what you're saying can apply to dealing with someone who's reporting to you and someone you report to, and having it flow in both directions. I'm curious to know, how do you control how you show up and respond in those situations? Because we're not all showing up in those situations fully formed, right? Especially earlier in our career, but also later in our career when we're under pressure, when we're under the gun. So, what tools or strategies do you give to your clients on how to regulate themselves in the interaction where they're trying to get to know the other person, they're trying to also maintain their boundaries, and it's just, maybe it's not going well? How do you help them figure out what they need to do to regulate themselves so they're showing up in the way that they want to show up in the interaction?
Yeah, such an important point you bring up is that self-regulation, because we can be so easily triggered, right? We have baggage, we have things that comes up.
Hmm.
And so it really is, I think, in those situations, the more present we are, the more mindful we are of what is coming up, because we always have that choice on how to respond.
Hmm.
And I have been in situations where I feel you're managing up and people have crossed the line, and, whether they come back at you verbally, where I have sort of taken that step back to say, why don't we pick this up a little later
Yeah.
when, we can both see things a little more clearly.
Hmm.
And that's hard to do,
Yeah.
particularly when the person is, senior to you.
Right. Right.
But you just can't make progress, and you may even damage the relationship if you react to it. So
Yeah.
it's that awareness, it's that pause, it's
Hmm.
that stopping. And
Hmm.
often it's a really good question that might diffuse things.
Right. Right. The power of asking a question versus making a statement is really huge
Absolutely.
when you're trying to buy time, I always say. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah, lean into that curiosity. And the thing about curiosity, and as a coach, I mean, it's one of the key tools, and it's for leaders too, because curiosity and judgment can't hold the same space. And so if we really are intentional about, I'm really curious about what's driving their behavior and why are they maybe getting upset, or why do they want it that way,
Hmm.
then there's no room for judgment.
Hmm.
When we start coming up with our stories of why that's happening,
Yeah.
that sort of impacts the relationship.
Yeah, I see what you're talking about in terms of the relationship between that and building trust. And I'm thinking back to a really difficult boss that I had decades ago and how much harm that person did on the team that was already a very high functioning team. And I think about my reactions and my responses in my frustration, in my fear, in my anger, and even if I had had enough presence to actually sit down with this person and say, what's really going on for you? Why are you behaving in such a horrible way to all of us when we're just trying to do our best? I don't think that even would have been effective because I hadn't built the trust up yet for that person to respond in a way that'd be productive, right? They would have gotten defensive. They would have said, you have no right to ask me that. You are subordinate to me, whatever they could have said. But there's something about this idea of building trust, and we talk about it a lot about how it's important to build trust. You alluded to it earlier, but what are some ways we build trust with someone who is more senior than we are? Aside from just part of building trust is do what you say you're going to do and get your work done and perform well, what other ways can someone like think about the situation where it's a new boss and it's a new relationship? What are some ways that trust can even be built so that you can have those difficult conversations?
Yeah, absolutely. And I hear you, right? Like stepping in and asking that question, like, what's behind this for you? Is like, what are you coaching me now? You
Exactly.
have to be really, really careful by that.
Yeah.
And I find it requires that patience to build the trust, right? That just takes time. I remember I had a CEO who had hired me. I was part of his senior team, but he didn't quite know exactly, what it is corporate communications did. And so there was that resistance to it, like telling me, what needed to be done.
Hmm.
And so I think if you recognize that, you deliver, you meet them where they are,
Hmm.
you deliver that,
Hmm.
but then you also offer your counsel. So they, often when we think people aren't going to like or want to hear what we have to hear, we don't say anything. But it's really leaning into offer your counsel. And even if they don't take your counsel,
Hmm.
right, when it goes sideways, as it might do, the next time they'll listen to you a little more.
Hmm.
So it's kind of just, step by step, building that trust, that accountability.
Hmm.
How about we think about it this way?
Yeah.
What would happen if we change it that way? And then whatever the answer is letting go of that. You've done your job in offering your best advice, your best counsel.
Hmm.
It's not up to you to get people to do what you want to say.
Uh-huh.
And I think if you let go a bit, you're more accepting of it, then
Hmm.
they listen to you the next time. Like, what was
Right.
that you said?
Right.
And then with this CEO, we got to a point of, anything happened in the organization. It's like, have we brought in communications? Do they have a lens on this? Are we
Hmm.
going to see that? But
Hmm.
that took, a good year and a half to
Right.
get to that point of trust. So patience is a key.
Patience. Yeah. Well, and I think the other important tip here is, like you mentioned earlier, is we've got to take an interest in people for who they are, not just our roles at work. And this is why, some people say, well, there's no time for that, or that's nonsense, or that detracts from the work. No, it's those 5 minutes at the beginning of a meeting or 10 minutes at the end where we're talking about our weekends or our families or our vacation plans or what we've had for lunch. Like, that's not nonsense. That's not a waste of time. That's what's actually going to build trust and resilience within the team. And it's those moments where, if I know that you see me as a human with outside interests and passions and worries and values, I'm going to be more inclined, and I don't know what the scientific data is around this, but I'm going to be more inclined to want to hear what you have to say and to be there for you and to, hey, you make a good point. But
Yeah.
if I don't even feel recognized or respected as a human being, there is zero trust there. So I feel like a lot of the times that we engage in these activities, and sometimes, some companies do it as forced fun to get to know each other, right? But we need to make those individual investments, even when it's uncomfortable for us, even if we're introverted or not as, I'm just not wired that way. We kind of need to wire ourselves that way because that's such a principle of trust. Even
Mm,
if you're ticking all the boxes and you're doing your job on time and you're delivering, that builds trust too. But
yes.
it's not just about that. Can you explain that dynamic to us? Because I will bet you there's someone listening going, but I get all my reports in on time. I do all my things. I blah, 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 blah. Why do we still not have a good relationship?
Yeah,
Right?
I check all the
I check all
boxes.
the
I
boxes.
check.
Exactly.
Yeah, you raise such a good point. And the work has become so transactional about checking boxes, jumping on the Zoom call, jumping off, getting to your next one. It's relentless
Hmm.
and on and on. And yet, to truly communicate, we need to connect. And to connect, we need to be relational. And we're losing that. The people that we work well with are people we know and trust and laugh with. In fact, I read that somewhere that a team who laughs together is a team who trusts one another.
Yeah.
And it is making that effort. And yet we dismiss that so easily as, I hate small talk. It's not small talk. Small talk leads to big conversations.
Ooh, I love
And
that.
and that's the way into people. When you understand what matters to people, what their values are, what drives them, then you're able to see things from their perspective.
Right.
And they know that you see them, and everybody needs to be seen, heard, and
Yeah.
understood. Because whatever level you are at, you have responsibilities
Yeah.
above you, and you have doubts and you have insecurities. It's the human condition.
Yeah.
So I think seeing the human, being that relational person and having that balance of transactional and relationship is just so important.
Mhm. Even if it's the boss. This is everything I'm hearing you're saying. And this is, I think, what the crux of what we want to get to and offer some real action items for people is it's your job to create that relationship with your boss as well as your leaders doing that for you. So
Absolutely.
where does that start and well, let me back up. Do you think there's a generational twist to this? Because I know growing up as Gen X, when I entered the workforce, it was all about how you get ahead is you manage up. you make things easier for your manager or your leader. I don't know if that's true anymore. What's your perspective on the generational expectations of managing up as we're talking about it?
Yeah. And I don't know. I mean, I can speak from my kids who are millennials and so forth. It is a little different. And I think exposure and to people, like when you think of it, there's people now who've been in the workplace a few years and have never experienced that in office in environment.
Mm-hmm.
And so much of the literature out there is about, speaking your truth and who you are and what about my needs and I want to be able to show up.
Yeah.
And somehow we've lost, I don't know if it's generational, but somehow we've lost that two-way street.
Mm-hmm.
Or we don't have those mentors like I did back in the early days who said, figure it out. That's your mission,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? If I had sat back and thought, I want this to be easy for me. I
Yeah.
want an empathetic boss who understands me and wasn't giving that back. It just
Right.
wouldn't have worked.
Right. Well, and I think
Yeah.
that's the important point here is that it's incumbent on all of us to be empathetic in both those directions. And just because your leader might have to be making decisions or doing things you may not like, it doesn't mean you roll over, if you're being mistreated by your leader. That's not what
Hmm.
we're saying. But have some compassion for the difficult decisions that they have to make. Have some
Yeah.
empathy for trying to understand they're managing multiple people and you might only be an individual contributor. And
Right.
they're dealing with the squeeze coming from above and the squeeze coming from below,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I think we tend to just write off the leaders that we don't agree with as toxic. We're so quick to label that as such when you and I we've probably experienced real toxic leadership. But I feel like that term is bandied about so much by a lot of the younger generations in the workforce. And I'm their biggest champion, so don't get me wrong. Like I
Hmm.
love the
Hmm.
way they're changing workplace culture. But so quick to, oh, because they made me work overtime one day this week because of a client crisis, I have a toxic boss. And we're forgetting that lens. So what's the solution to that? What do you think is necessary and what's within the power of leaders to do to bring their people along with them to try to have empathy going upwards as well as downwards?
Yeah, it's such a good question, and it's such a hard question. And again, a lot of it starts with us and throwing around those labels of toxic boss or micromanager or whatever labels we are is a rush to judgment. It's just not seeing the humanity of people. And I don't know if it's the answer, but awareness is always a really big thing. And how am I showing up? If we're mindful that it's a two-way street, it's how can I change how I see this particular situation,
Mm-hmm.
and what can I do? Um,
Mm-hmm.
so so it's not easy, and I'm curious what you see on this because it's a tough question.
Yeah. I mean, I think I think this is why I get the work that I get is because I'm being brought in not just for leadership development trainings, but also for cross-level conversations so
Yeah,
that it's not just the onus is not just on the leaders to show empathy, but hey, I'm talking to everyone in the workforce today about how we can be empathetic with each other, whether it's a colleague, whether it's a client, whether it's our manager or leader.
yeah,
And I think that's something, that's where I get the requests sometimes from leaders of saying, I give and give and give. And my team is constantly, they don't give back to me. And they shouldn't have to. I am the one in charge. It is my responsibility. But man, it would be nice if they could just take a little perspective and have a little empathy for what I have to deal with the larger issues that I'm dealing with, the board that I'm reporting to, the CEO that I'm reporting to, the shareholders that I'm responsible for. It's like they almost say like they don't see that. They're just seeing their little world. And so whether it's leadership trainings, whether it's having someone facilitate a conversation about that at one of their strategic meetings. Sometimes we do need to get some outside help to come in if we're not comfortable having that conversation. And there's a lot of leaders who don't want to admit they're having that problem because they're like, that sounds like whining, right? I shouldn't
Yes.
I shouldn't need that from my people, but we all do.
Yeah, we all do because it's the human condition. And as you're saying, leaders often feel they have to have all the answers. They have to be the strong ones. They have
Yep.
to keep it together. And a little vulnerability goes a long way. And it
Yes.
doesn't mean you're, pouring your heart out and your woes and everything to your team,
Right.
but giving them insight to what you're juggling
Hmm.
or what's on your mind
Right.
will open that sort of, tip the balance in compassion.
Yeah.
Because when we really understand people and that they're human and they're doing the best that they can,
Yeah.
and we have that compassion, I think we see people in a different light. Like
Yeah.
to know that micromanagement might really come from a place of pain or insecurity.
Hmm.
If we can see that,
Hmm.
we can be a little bit compassionate, and then we get curious
Right.
about, well, how can I help in this? So I
Yeah.
think leaders, yes, can show a little bit more vulnerability within
Yes.
within those boundaries. So there's a great exercise that we do when we gather teams together, and it's a trust building exercise. And usually we're going into a day of conversations where we want people to fully contribute. So we want to break that ice. So we put them into triads of 3 people. And everybody is given a list of questions. And some of the questions are more vulnerable than others. So people can choose what they want to share. But some of the questions are like, what's the hardest thing you've ever had to do? Or what was your proudest moment? Or what's a huge goal that you have for the coming year? So they're quite personal. And we send them on their way and they choose a question that they're comfortable answering with the triad. And when they get back, we invariably hear, I've worked with this leader for 10 years and I found out something about them that I didn't know. That was just very human. And you can
Wow.
feel the shift in
Yeah.
the room that they've had a conversation that they just don't have in the day to day.
Yeah. Absolutely. I love that technique because that is where we talk about taking time to ask and answer questions that we're usually too busy to ask each other, that
Hmm.
some people might think are a quote unquote waste of time. But those are the things that help humanize us to each other. So when you have a difficult ask, when you need to, take someone to task for poor performance, when you need to, ask your boss or say something difficult, you're able to have that understanding of who they are as a person, and you're able to say, I know this person is real. I can kind of let my guard down a little bit. I'm not just dealing with a persona. I'm dealing with an actual human being. And what's so simple yet we know it's so hard about what you're saying is, I think, what stops us from getting to that relationship is the busyness and the
Yes.
pressure, and it's the KPIs and the goals and the objectives and the this and the that and the quarterly sales, and we've got to make sure we're making that time for those connections. And that's why facilitated workshops or a training talk or even just a strategic offsite is so important, to step away from the business so that you actually can have time to facilitate conversations like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then how do we bring that into the workplace so it's part of the rhythm? We always talk about in one-to-ones, like check in on the person before you check in on the work.
Yes.
And it doesn't have to be the boss who does that. You can
Yeah.
initiate the conversation.
Yeah.
Ask what the boss did on the weekend or what's lighting him up these days or what book she's reading,
Right.
whatever it is. But it's those moments and it's seeing those moments as investment in the relationship. It's a
Hmm.
drop in the trust bucket, which, as we know, trust is built in drops and
Oh,
it's
yes.
lost in buckets. And
Indeed.
just knowing that, and to answer your question earlier about, is it a generational thing? What I would say is, if you want to accelerate your career, no matter what level you're at, right? Because there's
Hmm.
always higher levels to get to,
Yeah.
then be the person who makes the connections, be
Yeah.
the relational person,
Yeah.
the communicative person, the curious person, because people are going to notice that.
Hmm.
They noticed when you're being helpful, when you're
Hmm.
finding solutions,
Yeah.
when you're checking in on them. So your boss who, because say take micromanagement, it's usually about, are they doing the thing and are they doing it in the way? So anticipate that
Mhm.
that's a stress for them and take that off the table.
Yeah.
So it's being that this could be a superpower for
Yeah.
a person. It really could be.
Well, and this is what's going to lead to success in the age of AI, because it's those relational skills, it's those connection skills that leaders are going to be required to have, because we can get all the doing from the AI. What we can't get
Absolutely.
is the trust building. We can't get the listening. We can't get the connection and collaboration and innovation and ideation. We can't necessarily get that just from AI. We've got to interact with each other. And those people skills are making us so marketable in the era of AI. And this is a song I'm going to keep singing as we go through this transformation, because we're not going to be able to just be the leader who hides behind our email to have difficult conversations, or be the leader who, doesn't get up out of their office, or be the worker who avoids interacting with their boss because it's too hard, or they don't understand me, or it's too difficult. It's about what can we bring to the interaction and the conversation that no one else can, or nothing else
Absolutely.
can, I guess I should say, right? So,
Absolutely.
um,
It's the humanizing that's going to be the differentiator. I,
yes,
I mean, AI, like, it just doesn't do empathy. It can, maybe fake it,
yeah,
but it's not real. And
yeah,
if we really take that to heart, that it is a relational a relational element to build those relationships, to
yeah,
build trust, to have the conversations.
mhm,
They're the skills, and I
yeah.
hate that they're called the soft skills
Oh,
because
I do too. Yeah,
the soft skills are the hard skills,
right. Because
right?
what
And
you
the
and I both,
toughest to do.
that's our work, is we realize how it impacts the bottom line,
Yeah,
and so they're anything but soft, and they're often difficult. So when we think about the word hard in terms of that, but um, yeah, I think that there's so much, and I've talked about this a lot on this show with various guests who are leaders in AI. There's so much that is wonderful about AI, but
mm,
ultimately the transformational aspect of AI, the impact of it is a change management impact. It's going to change how organizations look, what jobs exist, what skills are needed, and all of those things are people issues. And we're not
yes.
going to be able to outsource that.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
What I'm hearing lately is, don't be afraid that AI is going to replace you. Be afraid that you'll be replaced because you don't know how to use the tools
Hmm.
and the
Hmm.
human skills that go
Well,
along
yeah, or how to
with
use the
that.
tools and how to upskill your human relational skills as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because they'll become more and more important as AI comes raging. Well, it's here,
It's
but
here.
even more
It's
so.
here.
Even more so.
Well, and I just want to take a little bit of a turn, because I know your book is coming, Seen, The Untapped Power of Appreciation. Again, another undervalued skill of gratitude and appreciation for yourself and others. Um, I know we'll have some links to where that's available as soon as that's available. But can you give us one final word of advice on the double flow of empathy? and what we need to know as someone who's reporting to a leader, and what a leader needs to know in terms of effectively leading their people about how to get that two-way flow going.
Yeah, I love that. I would say from the person managing up, it's to be others focus. It's not about you. It's that how can I help? How can I understand? How can we move things forward productively?
Mm-hmm.
And for leaders, I would offer that it is being a little bit more vulnerable and showing your human side, developing the relationship, because that's also a two-way street.
Mm-hmm.
So people see you as humans, understand what you need in the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So others focus one way and vulnerability the other way.
I love it. Well, and you can see how that's a self-fulfilling cycle there, because the more that leaders can be human and be transparent and be vulnerable, the less iconic they make themselves.
Yeah.
And then that in turn builds trusts for the people that report to you of understanding that you are a human being. And now I want to get to know you and understand where you're coming from. And it kind of it supports the cycle. So
Yeah.
I
That
love that.
approachability. Yeah.
Approachability, exactly. Well, Catherine, this has been amazing. We are going to have all your links in the show notes, and I just want to thank you for sharing your insights. So much good stuff. I hope folks will continue to follow you and follow the work of Fluency Leadership. And for anyone that's on the go, that's not looking at the show notes right now, where's the best place they can learn more about you and your work?
Fluencyleadership.com.
Perfect. I love
That's
it.
it.
I
Yeah.
love it. Well, thanks again. I'm glad we finally connected on this interview.
And thank you for having me, Maria.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to another episode of the Empathy Edge podcast. If you like what you heard, you know what to do. Please rate, review, and share it with a friend or a colleague. And until next time, please remember that cash flow, creativity, and compassion are not mutually exclusive. Take care and be kind.